No shock to anybody, but I guess the Cleveland Browns. Shedeur Sanders is shining at mandatory minicamp. We'll break it down on today's edition of Locked On NFL.
The new Locked On NFL. The madman Tyler Rowland is your double shot of NFL espresso with the Locked On local experts on every major story. Get ready, Rowland is revving up. The new Locked On NFL starts now. Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Football fans, welcome in to the Locked On NFL podcast, bringing you a double dose of the NFL's biggest stories with help from our local experts that know your favorite teams like no one else. I am your host, the madman, Tyler Rowland, joined today by Locked On NFL expert, the mastermind, Ross Jackson. On today's episode, we're going to be taking a look at how these rookie quarterbacks are doing in mandatory minicamp. Now, before we dive in, I do want to thank you for making Locked On NFL your first listen and being an everydayer here with us at the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Ross, again, no surprise to me, no surprise to you, but it seems like it might be a surprise to the NFL. Shedeur Sanders has looked great early on in Browns mandatory minicamp, in the OTAs, and my guy Spencer from Locked On Browns talked about that.
I understand, and I've said it, Shedeur Sanders is the fourth quarterback on the depth chart as things stand today, and I want to make that clear right now. I also want to make it clear, with everything that Shedeur Sanders has been given to this point, what has been put on his plate in terms of what he is being asked to do, the rep share that he's getting, the just in general, the situations he's being put in, with it being 11 on 11s, 7 on 7s, the teams he's being put with, I do believe he's making the most of those reps, and he has looked really good in the process of doing so. Going back to last week when he got his first 11 on 11 snaps that we saw in person, and he made a really nice throw to Caden Davis in the back of the end zone that was nearly a touchdown. Caden Davis didn't quite get his foot in, but I'm putting that more on Davis than I am Shedeur. It was a great throw, brilliant throw. And now this week, he opens up mandatory minicamp with a brilliant, what I thought was a really solid day for him. Basically, it was him and Dylan taking the majority of snaps. Kenny Pickett got some with the first team in 11 on 11s, but it was really just, it was Dylan Gabriel getting the going with the ones, and then Shedeur Sanders going with the twos, just trying to get a look at these guys.
I mean, how long is it going to take before they realize that maybe not the best quarterback on the team because Flacco's such a veteran, but the best quarterback with the most upside, that combination, is going to be Shedeur Sanders. So, again, no shock from me, no shock from you. It seems like there was only shock in the NFL.
Absolutely. And look, usually I'm the calm one, right? But I have to say, I am so happy about this right now because this is what we've been saying since before the draft, before we even got to this point, to where Shedeur Sanders was one of the best guys to go on the field. And there was no reason for what happened when it came to, for him play-wise, that there was no reason for what happened to him in the NFL draft to happen. And now we're seeing the fruits of our labor, Tyler. Welcome the rest of the NFL. We're glad that you can finally catch up with us. And to your question about how long is it going to take until the Cleveland Browns, it'll take until training camp because, that's the way that this works. But
yes,
I think they're already starting to see it, man. And I think it was wise of Stefanski and these guys to say, you know what, give the rookies their snaps. The veterans, you've seen the veterans, give the rookies their snaps and their opportunities. And I'm so glad to hear that Shedeur is out there cleaning up right now because shocker.
Right. I mean, he was the second best quarterback on tape in the NFL draft, in my opinion. And then now he's obviously a decent quarterback there. You're right. It's only mandatory minicamp. We're going to need to see this play out in training camp when it matters. But I do think that we're already starting to see the beginning of the climb. And quite frankly, it makes sense. If you're the Browns, why would you deal with Kenny Pickett? Why is that a thing? You brought Kenny Pickett in because you wanted a younger player that you could develop. So acting like Kenny Pickett is some veteran, like, oh, we know what we have in Kenny Pickett. No, you don't. Kenny Pickett is still a young player who's unproven. Like, if you already know what you have in Kenny Pickett, then you know that you don't need Kenny Pickett because Dylan Gabriel, in theory, now, I don't buy this, not a hill that I would die on, but Dylan Gabriel, in theory, you took him as a top 100 player. He should be better than Kenny Pickett right now, and you should value him and prop him up and give him reps much more than you do Kenny Pickett right away. And it would be the exact same for Shedeur Sanders. In my opinion, I said all along after the draft, well, I think Shedeur Sanders is better than Kenny Pickett right now. I thought they were comparable players. And Shedeur Sanders is just younger and cheaper. You know what I mean? Like, it just makes no sense at all. Of course, you're going to keep old veteran Joe Flacco around.
Yeah.
That gives you the best chance to win as many games as possible. I get that. I totally understand. But they should absolutely be prioritizing the rookie quarterbacks. And it, again, no surprise that Shedeur Sanders is the best of those guys and is impressing because he was the best based on the tape.
Yeah. Look, Shedeur Sanders is going to be the second best rookie quarterback in 2025. I have zero doubt about that. I'll say it outright. I think he finishes as long as he is given the opportunity that he deserves. So this is another part of the conversation, but as long as he's given the opportunity and he gets out there, which doesn't have to be week 1, it could be week 4, week 5, whatever. But when he gets back out there, we will be talking about him as the second best rookie quarterback just behind Cam Ward. I think he has a better season than Jaxson Dart. Even if he starts later than Jaxson Dart, I think you'll be able to say that the Browns liked what they got from Shedeur Sanders better than you'll be able to say that the Giants got what they wanted from Jaxson Dart, because I think Jaxson Dart needs a little bit more development. But where Shedeur Sanders is the most elite in his game are the places that make you a successful young quarterback. He doesn't have to be a guy that's going to go out there and pull the trigger to uncork all these deep shots in order to be on the field. Look, those are great plays. Those are great for the highlights. They sell tickets for the NFL. I get the value there, but the NFL is made up of what you can do in the short and intermediate game as a passer. And because of his elite accuracy, great ball placement, and great anticipation and his mind, because he is a good processor as well. As long as he doesn't have to deal with the same level of pressure behind or on that offensive line like he did at Colorado, he will shine in the opportunities that he is given. So I think Shedeur finishes 2025 as the second best rookie quarterback behind only Cam Ward, no matter how much time he gets, because he's going to impress in a way that the other rookies won't get a chance.
Yeah, and that makes sense. And I think the Browns, honestly, aren't a great team. So even with Joe Flacco trying to maximize wins, the odds that the Browns are like in the playoff race or on the bubble, I'm sorry, I just don't buy that. This year, I think they had a really good overall roster a couple of years ago when they made, Baker Mayfield in the playoffs and then Joe Flacco leading to the playoffs. Like, they had a pretty good roster, but that roster has deteriorated.
Right.
It deteriorated. That is always such a tough word. You know what I mean? It's like my mind deteriorates when I try to say it. But like, this is not that roster. They aren't as good on defense. The offensive line has taken a big step back, in my opinion. So I think that the Browns are going to be in a situation where they don't win a ton of games, and by Halloween, by Thanksgiving, it's like, why aren't we playing these young guys? And look, it may be Dylan Gabriel first up. He got the first team reps or whatever. I think they're making Shedeur Sanders earn it, so it doesn't seem like they just gave it to him out of, pity or whatever reason people could contrive, or the reason they would give it to Shedeur Sanders. They're making it clear that they're not doing that. But I think by Halloween, if it's not going well for the Browns, which I don't think it will, they need to start playing those rookies. And if they do Dylan Gabriel first until he flames out and it's obvious they need to play Shedeur, then sure. But Shedeur needs to be on the field at some point for the Cleveland Browns. And again, I think the overall theme here is no surprise to us that Sanders is playing well, is dazzling, the words used by Locked On Browns. But there's another rookie quarterback that is showing out in mandatory minicamp, and it happens to be the number 1 overall pick in Cam Ward. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Look, there's nothing like the NBA Finals. The intensity, the buzzer beaters, the fans losing their minds. It's the kind of atmosphere you have to experience live, and this year's matchup is already delivering. If you want in, Gametime makes it fast and easy to get seats, even for the biggest playoff games. Prices on the app actually drop the closer you get to tip-off, and they have killer last-minute deals, a panoramic view from your seat, and no surprise fees. Gametime truly is a game changer. I'm not kidding. I buy all my tickets on Gametime. I've gone to multiple NFL games, WNBA, NBA, MLB. I've gone to concerts. I've gone to comedy shows with tickets on Gametime. You get the best features in the industry. And hey, NFL tickets are on sale now. Best time to go to Gametime is right now. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. All right, Ross, let's continue today's edition of Locked On NFL. We talked about Shedeur Sanders impressing in Cleveland Browns mandatory minicamp, but we got to look at the rest of these rookie quarterbacks, and who better to start with than the quarterback that started it all in the draft, and that's Cam Ward. And look, a little bit of home cooking here, folks, on Locked On NFL. I'd stay away from the Titans as much as possible, but hey, Cam Ward is lighting it up at minicamp, one of the biggest stories in the NFL, and he is poised to take over. Before we dive into that, though, I do want to thank you again for making Locked On NFL your first listen. Make sure you get subscribed, stay subscribed. It may be the off-season for the NFL, but there is no off-season here on the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day. But with that being said, Ross, Cam Ward, first day of mandatory minicamp. First day, the entire team is fully together. He goes 20 for 21. His third pass, he threw an interception to veteran linebacker Cody Barton over the middle of the field. And then after that, he proceeded to go 18 for 18 to finish practice, 14 for 14 in 3 team 11-on-11 periods. Again, this is mandatory minicamp, folks. There's no pads, but very, very impressive from the young rookie. The next day at mandatory minicamp, he came back down to earth a little bit. No interceptions, but it wasn't as crisp and as clean. But we're hearing Brian Callahan say, hey, Cam Ward's always talking trash. And I'm like, hey, do I need to wait until you're done talking trash to give you the play? And he's like, no, coach, I'm listening. And then he'll spit the play back out perfectly. All of the veteran players are talking about Cam Ward, having a presence in the huddle, knowing all the play calls. He seems very ahead of schedule, even with the high expectations coming in. Another thing, no surprise to you. You said earlier you thought Cam would be the best rookie quarterback. Why do you believe that will be the case? And does this make you feel even more confident that that'll be true?
The reason why I believe he'll be the best quarterback, the best rookie quarterback, Cam Ward, is because of a piece of what you just described. There's a through line of everything that you just described, and it's mental capacity. That's why I think he's going to be the best quarterback, best rookie quarterback in 2025. He throws an interception on his third pass, and he goes 18 of 18, including 14 of 14 in those team drills. You know what that is? Short memory, composure, poise.
Bounce back.
That is all mental work. The fact that he could walk up there and be talking all that trash, and then Brian Callahan's like, hey, do I need you to wait? Do I need to wait till you're done? And he's like, no, I'm listening. That he gets a play and he can go and he knows the playbook. He can relay the plays. He's got command of the offense. He's able to do that with a crispness. He feels like he's ahead of schedule. Mental composure. That's all a big part of it, right? The game of football is a physical sport. There's no doubt about that. We watch these guys put their bodies through absolute hell all the time to go out there and do something that they love. But the mental side of the game is the separator. Every one of them's in the NFL. Every one of them's an incredible athlete. And you have the Joe Miltons, or not the Joe Miltons, I'm sorry, the Travis Hunters of the world. You have the who's the Seattle? No, the Seattle rookie.
Jalen Milroe?
Alabama. Jalen Milroe, thank you. Yeah, you have the Jalen Milroes of the world. You have the Lamar Jacksons of the world. You have those guys that are incredibly gifted physical athletes. But typically in the game of football, the separator is, do you know the playbook? Do you know how to operate? Can you forget the bad thing that just happened? And most of all, can you forget the good thing that just happened? Because your job's not done. And for me, Cam Ward, whether it was at Incarnate Wood, whether it was wherever he was, whether it was at Miami, whatever, he has always shown the mental capacity to be able to do that. Forget the good, forget the bad, go and make the next play. That's why I think he's going to be the best rookie quarterback in 2025.
And it's funny because in the pre-draft process, Brian Callahan, Titans head coach, general manager, Mike Borgonzi, who just came over from Kansas City, they both talked about like the neck up with the quarterback, like the poise and what's in between the ears and all of that. And then you see Cam Ward lead all these comebacks in college. And look, some of those comebacks are because he made some bad mistakes. You go watch that Cal game. I continue to say that Cam Ward's game against California is the entire Cam Ward package. He made some of the worst mind-numbing mistakes you'll ever see, but then had one of the most incredible comebacks that you'll ever see as well. So he just has a way to bounce back. And after a season of Will Levis and him just kind of constantly being a domino tower, Very nice to see somebody who can bounce back even if it's mandatory minicamp and not only bounce back and play well, but play incredible down the stretch. But with that being said, you like that home cooking, folks? How about we get a second serving of some home cooking? Another quarterback, very interesting, and the only other rookie quarterback that is set to be the starter right now, it seems, is Tyler Shough down in New Orleans, the team that Ross happens to be on the ground with. So I will ask you, what is going on with Tyler Shough? Because I saw some tweets earlier this week, and he seems like he might have you excited.
Oh, he's doing good, man. He's doing good. He's been a lot of fun to watch. I will say, if we're going to do some home cooking, New Orleans is the right place to do it, right? I do want to say that real quick.
Not wrong.
Best food in the world over here. But when it comes down to what we're seeing right now in New Orleans, when it comes to Tyler Shough, is that we're seeing a really impressive player. His arm angles are insane. His physical ability to be able to throw on the run. He's got good ball placement. He's got wild, good arm strength and arm power, good arm talent. Does all those things really well. He right now feels like he's pretty evenly tied or just slightly behind Spencer Rattler, last year's 5th round pick, in sort of who is kind of performing best at minicamp and OTAs. Like you mentioned, it's shorts, it's no pads, there's no pass rush, all these other things. And what's interesting is the Saints have not done a single full team 11-on-11 drill so far this offseason. They have only done 9-on-7 and 7-on-7s. The idea behind it being that head coach Kellen Moore just wants to be able to kind of use OTAs and mini camps as a building block and get his players into training camp, which the Saints have not always done successfully. The injury history, all those other things, I get it. So they've kind of gone a little bit of a different approach here. And so we have to remember that there's always been passing lanes in all of these games, because there's no offensive line, there's no defensive line, there's nothing like that. And that is such an underrated part of why a quarterback looks really good. But so I try to remove all that thing, and I'm just looking at, does he make the throws? Where's the ball placement? How's the anticipation? Things like that. I think he's holding on to the ball still a little bit too long, and that's going to happen when you don't have a pass rush to speed up your clock. Right. And so that I think will adjust once he gets into training camp and things like that. So I wouldn't put him on the dazzling and shining level of a Shedeur Sanders. I wouldn't put him on what sounds like the really impressive near dominant level of a Cam Ward in terms of his upside, what you've seen over in Tennessee. But I would put him in he is on track with where he should be kind of place. The fact that he and Spencer Rattler are still in conversation and close says a lot about Tyler Shough. Spencer Rattler has an entire year of NFL experience ahead of him, 600 plus more collegiate snaps, 300 plus more passing snaps in college as well. So not only does he have more NFL experience, he has more collegiate experience in terms of actually being on the field, which people don't realize because Tyler Shough was in college for so long, right? 7 years. And so
Justin Herbert's backup.
Right. And so I
insane.
think that, right. And so I think that is one of those pieces of the element that actually kind of shows you like, oh, Tyler Shough's actually doing pretty well because he's hanging around. He hasn't gotten left in the dust. And the Saints have no interest in bringing in a veteran quarterback. So no one's going to get in the way of this at all in terms of getting these two quarterbacks all the reps throughout training camp, then maybe bringing in a veteran. But they're not interested in giving up snaps at quarterback to a 30-plus-year-old quarterback. So that's kind of where I'd put Tyler Shough right now. Spencer Rattler feels like he's a little bit ahead, but I think the fact that he hasn't blown past Tyler Shough is actually a good thing for the young quarterback.
Ross, let me just put on a little exhibition of how this works when you're doing sports media. You just spun that in I know it sounds negative, but you just spun that in a neutral to maybe positive way. You could come away with that. Let me take what you just said and spin it negative.
Yeah, okay? Dude, let's get both. Let's get both.
If I take that and I say, Tyler Shough was in college for a really, really long time. He's a really old prospect. But Spencer Rattler still is way more experienced than him. That's hard to compute, and I don't know if that's a good thing. And then my big concern about Tyler Shough is that on his tape in college, there are some times where I thought he shied away from pressure. He's had a lot of injuries in college. He doesn't want to get hurt. So the fact that he isn't dazzling and look with all of his natural talent when he doesn't have to worry about getting hit, that's concerning to me because when he does have to deal with those live bullets, even if he can't get touched, still there's a pass rush. It's 11-on-11 early in training camp before the pads go on. Like, I expect him, just in my opinion, to take a step back once the pads go on and he has to deal. Yeah. So the fact that he's not already like way better than Spencer Rattler or looking, I guess to me with his age, his experience, but lack of experience in college, and then the concerns I have with him as a player, I guess I could take everything you just said and spin that a different way, but
100%.
that's the fun. Now, what I'll say is, I think it would be unfair to spin it completely negatively. I think it's still more in the neutral. But someone who he certainly is playing better than is Jaxson Dart in New York. All right, Ross, let's cap off today's edition of Locked On NFL. We're taking a little progress report for the rookie quarterbacks. We talked Shedeur Sanders, we talked Cam Ward, Tyler Shough, the guys who we are most interested in. But now we got to look at the other quarterbacks. Jaxson Dart in New York, Jalen Milroe in Seattle. And what's crazy is we've talked about three guys, if you count Dillon Gabriel, who weren't drafted in the first round. Cam Ward obviously was, but the other three guys, Dillon Gabriel, Shedeur Sanders, Tyler Shough, not drafted in the first round. Jalen Milroe, not drafted in the first round. But Jaxson Dart was. And quite frankly, out of all five of the guys that we're going to talk about today, Jaxson Dart might be struggling the most. And the GOAT, Patricia Traina, the legend from Locked On Giants, talked about that.
With Jaxson Dart, I've said this before with him, Jaxson Dart, whether he's throwing long or short, he's putting a lot of mustard on his passes. And there's a matter of developing touch. And I didn't really see much in the way of touch on those shorter throws. They were just kind of zipped right into the receiver. Now, another thing that we took note of from the practice with Jaxson Dart is that every time he was under duress, he would scramble to his left and he would throw the ball off balance. And the balls, those were some of the ugliest looking balls that he threw when he was scrambling to the left and then throwing off balance. Just no accuracy. He put one up for grabs that got picked off. Just not a good look moving on, scrambling to the left. Now, I don't know if that's something that they could fix, but basically when Dart has not set his feet, he has tried to muscle the ball in, using his arm strength. And it hasn't always worked out, at least from what we saw in today's practice. So Jaxson Dart had more valleys, as I put it, over on New York Giants on SI than he did peaks in this particular practice.
Look, there's a reason that, it's one practice. Again, Dart could get better. He was a guy who we expected. Right. It's, mandatory minicamp, OTA practices. It's summer, all-season practices. You got to take everything with a grain of salt, of course. But I just want to say that I didn't like Jaxson Dart during the process. I didn't like Tyler Shough. I said numerous times I'd take Shedeur Sanders or Jalen Milroe over them. They have good natural talent, but to me, I just don't see the feel. I don't see the natural talent in terms of big arm, good athleticism, good size. But I don't see the instincts. I don't see the feel for the position that I see from a guy like Sanders, from a guy like Cam Ward. Milroe maybe needs to develop that, but I've seen just as much of that from him as I have the other guys. And Milroe is the most athletically gifted out of all of them by far. You know what I mean? It's not even close. So if I'm going to take a bet on a guy who needs development, I'm going to go with Milroe far before I go with Dart or I go with Shough. You know what I mean? So I guess it was always confusing to me to see Dart go in the first round. The Giants executed their plan, but I don't know if I agree with the execution of that plan. So I guess self-fulfilling prophecy at the end of the day. I am not shocked to hear that, Jaxson Dart needs some mechanical work because that was something we knew all along.
Yeah, this is always the big thing with Jaxson Dart was that he was an exciting prospect when he worked outside of structure, but what was he going to be able to do in structure was always going to be the big question. And that was always going to be the thing that led to the fact that he was never going to be a day one ready-made guy. Like that was always the biggest thing. I remember in the Locked On NFL mock draft that we did, I traded into the first round as the New Orleans Saints and I drafted Jaxson Dart. And I did it because that's kind of like where some of the rumors were headed at that time.
You knew that they were in on him. So
yep. And one of the things that Matt Williamson, who does the Peacock and Williamson NFL show here on Locked On and was one of the panel members for the mock draft, said was, I just don't know about Jaxson Dart as a day one guy. And I think we're watching exactly that play out. In that simulation, it would have been Jaxson Dart behind, Derek Carr for a year. Well, Derek Carr retired, right? He gone.
Yeah.
And so the Saints probably ended up much better off not going after Jaxson Dart because they didn't need somebody to start, because they ended up needing somebody else to start day one.
Yeah.
The Giants are maybe in a better position because of that too. They don't have to have him start day one, but I don't know that there were other options or any better either. So I think if you're investing a first round pick, though, you definitely want to have a little bit more confidence than it sounds like they're having right now.
Yeah.
And trading up too, not just investing in a first round pick, but giving up the capital to do so.
Yeah, 100%. And I would also say that it's probably not as likely as we thought that like Jameis Winston will get traded or cut or something like that. Like they if they want to really win games, they probably can't rely on Dart. And that makes me wonder. I've said all along that having Jaxson Dart, even if you lose games with Russell Wilson early, the prospect of changing to Jaxson Dart and then winning some games and him looking pretty decent, even if Dable only wins 5 or 6 games, but it happened like Dart wins 4 of those games and looks good in the last 8 weeks of the season, you're probably going to keep your job. But if he doesn't look good because he's really, really not ready, you might not be the head coach who's developing Jaxson Dart next year because you lost a bunch of games with Russell Wilson because he's washed. And then Jaxson Dart is nowhere near ready and you couldn't get him ready in time. Now you're just losing all your games and looking bad again. And maybe you're picking a quarterback next year again because next year's quarterback draft looks good, or maybe you got to pass on him because you don't have a first-round pick, and like it just creates a lot of concern for the Giants.
And we haven't heard the narrative in a long time. This used to be a really popular thing, but the NFL's going back to it. They're going to replace you with the quarterback whisperer. They're going to do it, man. Like that's going to be the thing. Like the quarterback whisperer is back at head coach, and that's going to be kind of that big thing to where if you don't find that success here, you're looking at it next year.
That's why D'Amico Ryans needs to keep a look over his shoulder. I know things look great in Houston, and he looks awesome.
Keep that head on a swivel.
If Stroud keeps sucking and they don't do well, they're going to be like, wait, why don't we get an offensive head coach? And then we don't have to rotate through offensive. Anyways, that's a conversation for a different day. Speaking of the team that switched offensive coordinators this offseason, though, we have the Seattle Seahawks. And Jaxson Dart may be struggling, but Jalen Milroe continues to impress. We'll throw it the Locked On Seahawks.
Just seeing how much that Jalen Milroe, the third-round pick out of Alabama, how much he has improved steadily over each one of those practices. And that is all you can ask for when you're talking about a rookie quarterback. You are seeing these incremental steps that are being made every time he's on the field. Mike McDonald talked about it today after practice, that he's earned the right to have that confidence with the prep that he has put in, being there at 4:30 in the morning on some of these days. I mean, this guy does not mess around. He is a worker. That has not been overblown at all. And that was one of the things that really jumped out to me the last couple of days in this mini camp. And I know he's playing against third stringers, but he's playing with third stringers. And getting to see Jalen Milroe, just how much more comfortable he is in this offense, that has been one of the big storylines for me here this last 2 weeks.
Listen, there's one thing about Jalen Milroe that we know for certain. He will work hard. I hate to, project certain things and blah, 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 but he's got that military background. His dad was a Marine. His mom was in the Navy. Like, I'm sorry, maybe I'm just naive, but like he has just been one of the hardest workers that we've seen. You go to Alabama, all that natural talent to even be where he's at required so much hard work. I just feel like he's going to be dedicated and different than all the other quarterbacks, even with Sanders, even though it's maybe not fair to him because of where he got drafted, there is truly the least amount of pressure on Jalen Milroe of any of these quarterbacks that we've talked today. So him being able to just work in the shadows and in the darkness like he's Bane or something, and then reemerge to blow up stadiums around the NFL a couple of years from now.
That's so good.
Dude, seriously, I can 100% see it happening. It's, it's the Legion of Doom led by Bane. I really like Jalen Milroe. I think that Seattle's got a good plan for him. I think he's going to make some noise. It just won't be for a couple of years. But I think if Sam Darnold comes back and maybe he struggles into next year, we'll see Jalen Milroe by midway next season in 2026. And I would take Jalen Milroe right now over Tyler Shough and over Jaxson Dart in terms of who I think is going to turn into the better player.
Yeah, I think the worst case scenario with Jalen Milroe is that you get one of the most dynamic athletes in the NFL. Oh, darn. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like it was such a good investment for Seattle. And I think Clint Kubiak's actually a great offensive coordinator with him if Clint Kubiak makes it long enough to see Jalen Milroe as a starting quarterback because of the run heaviness of his offense. I think it supports what it is that Jalen Milroe can do, and it's going to allow them to be able to, force some stacked boxes and give him better throwing looks and things like that. And of course, play to his ability as a dynamic rusher too. So I'm with you. I'm not a guy that's got the most confidence in Sam Darnold. I know he had a great season in Minnesota last year, but I'm not sure he can repeat it. And I'm certainly not sure he can repeat it in Clint Kubiak's offense, which isn't always the most innovative. And so we'll see what happens with him. But I do think he's going to get a lot of time, Sam Darnold will, and a lot of patience because of how well he performed in Minnesota, which is the best possible situation for Jalen Milroe, who I agree with you. I think eventually is going to, blow everybody's minds once he finally gets the opportunity. But it's not going to happen soon and it doesn't need to.
Yeah, and not only will Sam Darnold get patience because of what he did in Minnesota last year, but it makes sense to give Sam Darnold patience because you don't want to rush Jalen Milroe out there either.
Right.
So it's just like a perfect storm. But it'll be interesting to see how all these guys do in training camp. I'm sure we'll talk about these quarterbacks much more throughout the summer. Again, it may be the offseason for the NFL, but there is no offseason for the Locked On Podcast Network. But that's going to do it for us today. I am your host, the Madman Tyler Rowland, for my co-host, the Mastermind, Ross Jackson. As I tell you every episode, thanks for tuning in and stay safe out there.